Let's talk about one of the weirdest, most enduring mysteries out there: alien abductions. For decades, you've got thousands of people all over the world telling stories about being taken by, well, something not from here. But the really chilling part? It's not just the stories themselves, it's how freakishly similar they all are.
I want you to think about a really basic fear. You're at home, the doors are locked, the windows are shut, you're safe. But what if the thing trying to get in doesn't care about locks? What if a wall is no more of a barrier to it than thin air? And that's really the heart of the abduction phenomenon. These stories aren't just random, chaotic nightmares. People who tell them describe something that feels structured. It's like everyone's reading from the same terrifying script, a playbook that details exactly how to get into a locked room and take someone. All right, so let's dig into that playbook. First up, how do they get in? We're going to look at the different methods people report, and we'll start with the stuff that sounds kind of normal before we get into things that just completely break the laws of physics as we know them. When you boil it down, the stories describe three main ways this happens. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward. They come through a door or a window. But then things get a whole lot weirder. Some people talk about tunnels of light, these portals just opening up in their rooms. And then there's the most mind-bending one of all, just walking right through a solid wall. That last one has a name: phasing. It's this idea that solid matter just stops being solid, that you or they can just pass through a wall or a ceiling like a ghost. I mean, think about it. It is the ultimate violation of your private, safe space. And get this idea is not new. It's been part of these stories for a very long time. If you go back to the Tujunga Canyon cases, which started way back in 1953, you find reports from multiple witnesses in these remote cabins describing beings passing right through the walls. This detail has been there pretty much from the beginning. Okay, so they're inside. Now what? The next chapter in this script is the abduction itself. How is a person actually removed from their home? Well, just like the entry, the stories tend to focus on two really specific, iconic methods that seem to defy gravity. This quote really captures that surreal, horrifying feeling that so many people describe. You're completely paralyzed, but you're also weightless, just floating up from your own bed. This is at the very center of the Linda Napolitano case, which is one of the most famous abduction stories ever, partly because it didn't happen in some remote field, but in the middle of a city. Yeah, the 12th floor. That one detail is what makes her story so staggering. Linda Napolitano claims she was floated out of the closed window of her apartment in Manhattan from 12 stories up. The story got even crazier when investigators later said they'd found independent witnesses, people on the Brooklyn Bridge, who saw the whole thing happen. So the script seems to have two main ways of getting you out of the room. On one hand, you've got levitation, like Linda Napolitano's story. It's often described as being very personal, with beings right there, physically guiding you. On the other hand, you have the classic beam of light, like a tractor beam from science fiction. The Amy Rylands case out of Australia is a perfect example of this. Her friends swore she saw Amy get pulled up into a column of light. It feels much more mechanical, much more impersonal. So we've talked about what they supposedly do, phasing in, levitating out, but the script is even more detailed than that. It also covers how the whole experience feels for the person involved. And guess what? The descriptions of the internal, psychological state are just as consistent. Before anything even really happens, the experience almost always starts the same way. First, a sudden, total paralysis sets in. Then, the room might fill with a weirdly bright light or maybe a strange mist. But the weirdest part, people report this profound sense of calm washing over them, like time is slowing down. And almost always, it's followed by a chunk of missing time, a total gap in their memory. That strange, dreamlike feeling actually has a name in UFO circles. They call it the Oz factor. It's that moment when everything goes silent, the air feels still, and the world around you suddenly feels unreal, like you've stepped onto a movie set. It's like it's the psychological prep for what's about to happen. Now, of course, there is a totally different script we have to look at, the skeptic's explanation. And you know what? It lines up almost perfectly with the abduction narrative. That feeling of paralysis and seeing an intruder in your room, that's a textbook symptom of sleep paralysis. Those super detailed memories of floating, critics say they can be accidentally created or contaminated during hypnosis. And let's be real, science fiction has given all of us a pretty clear template for what an alien abduction is supposed to look like. So where does this leave us? It's a real puzzle.
In one corner, you've got thousands of stories from all over the world that are just too consistent to be just random dreams. And in the other corner, you have these very plausible, scientific explanations for almost every single element of the story.
When you lay the cases out like this, you really see the pattern pop. From a remote cabin in California in the 50s, to a small town in Massachusetts in the 60s, to a high-rise in New York City in the late 80s, the core beats of the script are the same. Phasing through walls, levitation, strange paralysis. The story just keeps repeating itself, decade after decade. So maybe the biggest question isn't just, is it real? Maybe it's, why this story? Why this specific script get told in such detail over and over again? Whether it points to a genuine, bizarre phenomenon, or it's just a powerful piece of modern folklore, this script of intrusion really gets at our deepest fears about what's real, what's safe, and whether we're truly alone. And honestly, that's what makes it so hard to look away from.